Hello and welcome to the PRsonal podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by the wonderful Natalie Silva. Natalie is Director of Thumbs Up Marketing Consultancy. So, Natalie, at what age were you illegally adopted?
Well, that's a leading question, isn't it? So I was 3 years old, and so we're talking about 1986. I was adopted from Central America. From El Salvador, and maybe not many people, certainly when I was younger, knew where El Salvador was. But if you look at the tiny skinny part of Central America below Mexico before you get to South America, that's where that beautiful country is.
How did this illegal adoption come about?
So my parents, they couldn't have kids of their own. They had adopted previously from within the UK. And my father, both parents actually had seen the news coverage about the Civil War on the news, and it really struck a chord with them. I think because it's the brutality of the war and the senseless of it all, the killings of innocent people, it really touched them. And they'd been wanting to adopt a little girl because they had two boys, and they're in the 40s, and they were just compelled to try and make a difference because I think they'd heard that there's a lot of displacement, obviously, during war. A lot of orphans created, as we know, this happens during war times, and they wanted to make a difference and they wanted to adopt from overseas.
Right, and what was the Civil War all about?
So for those who don't know, the Civil War was probably an amalgamation of centuries of unrest in Central America, in El Salvador. And if anyone knows anything about Latin American politics, they may know that there has always been unrest in various different regions due to inequality. So this goes way back to probably like the 1500s when the Spanish or the Portuguese took over and took control of various different lands. What it meant that there was a real divide between those who had and didn't have. There was real social inequality. Lack of education, care system, opportunities. The impoverished were very impoverished. And the leading classes basically were able to live a life of luxury in comparison. And so this resulted in kind of like an uprising from the people. And there'd been various different uprisings in El Salvador over the centuries. And it came to a head in 1979, and that's when the Civil War started. And then what happened in 1982 was, for any listeners who may have been raised Catholic and may have learnt in the UK about Oscar Romero, the Salvadorian priest who stood up for the plight of the people, he was actually assassinated in 1982 by the military. And the military was American funded as well. The American government ploughed, the numbers vary, but around $4 billion at the time into the war efforts to support the government and to support the stronghold against the uprising of the people. So it was the military who were responsible for the assassination of Oscar Romero, and then everything just sort of snowballed from there, and just full-blown civil unrest and unnecessary deaths.
Sounds like a really troubling time to give your parents at that time. And how, again, just to ask that question, how were you taken from them?
So my father was actually fighting in the war. It created a real divide between people. You were either seen as kind of for or against the government, and those who were against were sort of seen as the kind of the Liberation Front, so the guerrillas, and they formed their own coalition, the FMLN. But others were forced into the army. So a lot of young boys were forced into the army. And I know this isn't just contained into Central America or Latin America. It happens all over the world. They take young boys, they train them up, and then they force them to fight against their own people. And that's what happened with my father. He'd met my mum quite young, and they had myself and my other siblings. And my father was away fighting. And so it was my mum that was left with 3 children during the Civil War. They were very impoverished, but I sort of had a family unit around them helping them. And it transpires that this woman who she didn't really know, kind of befriended her and said, "This is tough times, we can help you, we can take the children away, we can look after them, feed them, we'll bring them back." And so she sort of, it was kind of very clandestine. She'd managed to gain her confidence, and she thought she was handing us over, for the best reasons, and never anticipated what was going to happen, which was one time when she handed us over, we never returned.
Breaks my heart just hearing that. I can't imagine what your poor mother went through. And I take it your adopted parents, they didn't know any of this was illegal. They didn't know anything about this was happening.
No, they thought they were doing the best thing, and if they were alive today, they'd be devastated.
So did they ever find out that it was illegal?
No, because I only found out in later years. So yeah,
it's just horrendous. Does this still happen today?
I don't. Not in El Salvador. Probably across the world, yes. It is people trafficking, essentially.
Yeah.
It's making a profit because my parents paid money for the adoption process. They paid money to be able to give a new life to a child and give them love. So there's a lot of money to be made in that, and that was a real problem. And it's only now we're talking, coming up 40 years later, where there's lots of other people like myself, mostly in North America, some parts of Europe, who were adopted and have discovered that they were also taken or snatched.
It's heartbreaking. And like you're saying, both parties think that they're doing the right thing, in terms of that we're giving a poor child who doesn't have any parents over there a chance. And then your poor mother thinking, oh, this lady's helping me. Oh, it's just heartbreaking. Yeah. So how was life with your adoptive parents?
No, it was lovely. It was lovely. Some beautiful childhood memories. So I grew up in Hartlepool, and I had a very comfortable upbringing. Lots of love, support, encouragement, just what a child needs to grow up healthy and, stable. And they're always very open about my adoption. It was obvious because they were white and I'm dark. So, and they would often, my dad especially, he liked to talk about it. He liked to talk about when he went over to El Salvador for me, and kind of the crazy times, because he was only there a short period, but obviously the Civil War was going on, so he had to be really mindful and very careful, and kind of fair skin and blue eyes, So
oh, and yeah, so it was really important to you and to your adopted parents to talk about your heritage.
Oh, completely.
Yeah, I think that's lovely. Did you come over? Did you have any possessions, or just literally what you travelled in?
Very little. Few pieces of clothing which I still have to this day and I cherish. The traditional Salvadorian dress. If anyone's ever seen like South American kind of tapestry, that's what the dress looks like. It's gorgeous. And a couple of other items, some toys. And my father had come over and brought toys with him, so they all came back with us. And so I remember aspects of him when he came over. I remember aspects of the orphanage.
Of course, because at 3 you can remember early memories from 3. And you touched on the orphanage. What process was that? Was that in El Salvador?
Yeah, in El Salvador. So all I can think is of this woman took me to this orphanage in inverted commas, and then then they basically tried to find a buyer. It sounds awful, but tried to find a new home for us. And I know that my parents said they were given various different photos of different children, and they had to choose the child. And
catalogue.
Yeah.
And did you? I know it's very hard to remember back and memories at 3. Did you feel that something wasn't right in that situation?
It's very hard to remember. All I remember is everything was very matter of fact, and even my memories in Spanish, they then translated into English, and it was as if I was just very accepting of it. And I remember first meeting my father, and I remember how I felt when he'd give me the gifts, and I remember how I felt when I came back to the UK that very first day. And my adoptive mum, she always used to like to say this. She said, "Oh, you fit in from day one, because that first night when I brought you home and put you in the bath, and you pointed to me and you said, 'Mama.'"
Oh, I mean, that's beautiful, but heartbreaking at the same time for you.
So it's like, I accepted it. Yeah, a very...
Yeah. And did you, and again, a very tough question because you were 3, did you at that time miss your real mum and dad? Were you thinking, where are they? I want them?
Those memories have kind of faded. I don't remember having sadness, but my mum and dad said I did have a bad temper, and they thought it was because of displacement.
Right.
And I grew out of that.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, bless you.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how horrendous it must have been. I mean, I guess it is a blessing you were so young
Mm.
to not fully remember it.
Well, I learned English within 6 months. I was fluent, so it just happened really, really quickly. And but then, and then after a couple of years, my accent was completely gone. So that just assimilated very easily. And I think at that age, children are just sponges, right? They just learn. So you know what it's like, very resilient, very much more resilient than we give them credit for, actually.
Yes. And emotionally aware as well. Yes, absolutely. But unfortunately, your happy kind of life with your adoptive parents didn't last as long as you'd have hoped. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so like I said, the majority of my childhood was just lovely, and I was very fortunate. My mum got breast cancer when I think I was about 8 years old, 7 or 8. My brother be able to correct me on the exact timings. And she had a mastectomy. She had a breast removed, and we all got on with our lives. But unfortunately, the cancer came back, and it spread to her lymph nodes. And then by the time that I'd reached 12, she'd become a lot worse. And she passed away when I was 12. So that was incredibly. It's such a formative years, isn't it? You just start in puberty. In fact, it was that year, I started transitioning into being a proper woman, not a little girl. I wanted my mum there to go through those things with me, shopping for your first bra, that kind of thing that they do,
Yes.
And it was hard. But then, I became closer to my father, and then I started to mature as well. So it was nice that I had kind of this lovely, more mature relationship going on with my father, and realising that, he was actually, besides being the guy that went out and did the work and then did stuff for my mum in the garden and fixed things, and he was a musician too. He was actually also very artistic. So one hobby we took up together, and my dad got into photography after my mum passed away, and he joined the local photography club. We would go for days out, Durham, Newcastle, York, and he would take photos. I'd be with him, my sister too. And then we'd spend time developing the photos together in his darkroom. He changed one of the small spare bedroom into a darkroom, and that was nice because I was very creative too. Probably still am creative. So that was like a shared hobby that we did together, and yeah, it was difficult because it's hard to see your parents grieving like that. It's very, very difficult to swallow that. And he sadly had a heart attack and died at work when I was 15. So
Goodness me. So once again, you find yourself an orphan. I just can't imagine how hard that was. You must have had feelings of like, why me? What have I done to deserve this second time round? Can you talk about it? Or was it too painful and difficult?
Yeah, no, I can. So, yeah, because I think it's important for people to understand, if anyone's going through this, that it's okay, that you do get through it. And I don't know how I got through it. Some good school friends, I was raised in a Catholic community in Hartlepool, so people rally around. I went to English Martyrs, Catholic secondary there, and it was a real tight community, and somehow I just got through it. And I think, anyone that knows me, I do tend to try and put my best foot forward, try and be positive, even in adversity. But obviously, when you're on your own and you're processing those emotions, you get to some dark places. And I did get some dark places from the age of about 15 to about 17, 18. Went off the rails a little bit. But yeah, there were some difficult moments, but I'd say that even in those dark moments, you manage to get strength. And I don't know where that comes from. I am quite spiritual, and there have been moments where I've thought there had to be some sort of intervention to have pulled me back from whatever I was thinking or how I was feeling at that moment, something that gave me strength. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I'm quite spiritual too. It's almost like you sometimes have to be to get you through that and believe in a higher purpose or a higher power. There has to be a reason why this is happening to me. So you're at that moment in despair. What was the turning point?
I actually don't know, but like I say, there was just this feeling that I just got this more feeling of hope from nowhere, from nowhere. Because to look on the face of it, I literally was just, I don't know. I mean, I was on autopilot at that time in my life. I didn't really have any focus, and somehow I just got some hope and some strength, and I kept on going, and went from strength to strength, actually.
Yeah. And describe what off the rails meant to you at that age?
Or the usual drinking, smoking.
Right.
And just not taking care of myself the way that,
You serve.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I didn't have someone saying, maybe rein it in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can't imagine. I think I would have done exactly the same. But it's just incredible how you managed to turn your life around.
Yeah. It's just, I guess it's just like self-medication, isn't it? That's why people have addictions. And if anyone's ever heard of Gabor Mate, a leading psychologist, he very eloquently puts together the connection and argument for addiction being connected to childhood trauma. We try to self-medicate. We try to ease the pain, try to escape from whatever we're experiencing by getting obliterated, by getting stoned, by being promiscuous, by whatever it is that helps us, we would do until the pain goes away, but it never goes away. It's an empty void until you heal that pain.
And how did you heal the pain?
I think it's taken quite a few years. One of the major things that happened was I met my now soon-to-be ex-husband, and we had our first child quite young. And I remember the day that my eldest was born. Maybe that was really like the true turning point, in that when I felt pregnant, I was like, okay, so I'm not going to university then, because I was 19 at the time, due to be 20. I'd just done a gap year. And I thought, right, okay, so I'm not going to university. I've got this child to look after. Right, then I've got to get on and do with it. So I did. And she was my focus. And I always say she was like my little saviour. Not if she's listening, I hope it's not too much pressure on her. But she was. I mean, it was a real pivotal moment in my life, being a mother, and it felt like I had purpose and focus that I didn't have before.
Yeah, I can understand that, even without all the trauma that you'd experienced before that. So almost having your daughter healed you to a certain extent.
To a certain extent, and I had all this love to give, but I had so much loss. And then suddenly I had all this love to pour into this child, and then her sister came along a year later, so double trouble. So I had all the love to pour into the two little munchkins. They were gorgeous, so cute when they were little. And yeah, I think I just wanted to be a good mum. But then it was always something like, I need to go back to university. I need to go and get myself sorted. I need to get like a good career. And so...
And did you do that?
I did.
Awesome. Good for you.
Yeah.
And that, what you just said there about love to give, you often think of it from an outsider's point of view, that, when you're an orphan, you feel that you're not loved. But I hadn't thought about that you had no one to give love to. And that's just as important, isn't it?
God, yeah.
Yeah.
So important to give, and to give love, because it's reciprocated, right? But also I think there's an element of, there's definitely abandonment issues and abandonment wounds that had to be healed. But then having your own child, it's then, especially if you're adopted, it changes things, because where you didn't have that bloodline connection before, you suddenly do.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. There's so many parts to it that must have just been psychologically, so intriguing, but also damaging for you. I mean, did you, because this is something that I faced having children, worrying that I suddenly am not going to be around to look after them. And then you'd experience that from your adopted parents. Did you ever worry about that for your children?
Yeah, I still do. I mean, anyone that knows me well will know that I'm a bit of a fitness nut, and very much into like my not just my mental health and spiritual well-being, but like eating well, trying to eat clean except the weekends, Like even this morning it was strength and conditioning session. So like it's, for me, and I think genuinely that's born from a fear of, God, I don't want to go and leave them.
Yes.
I want to live to a good old age and live a good life. So
yeah. No, I feel the same. And I think, I don't know, my granddad suddenly died when I was 3, and I don't know if that was more traumatic for me than I realised, because I always have this, and I think I've talked about it with other parents, where sometimes I'll kiss my girls goodbye and think, God, this could be the last time I see you. And then I've since realised that's not normal to constantly think like that and live in that state of fear. But I just am so grateful for them being in my life, and I just worry, you know, what if this happens? I just think if I'm always in that state of mind, always grateful for them, then, you know, hopefully it's almost like insurance. But
it's true. I think that's really, is it normal? I don't know. But I've definitely gone through those periods where I've just been so like, I don't know, not fearful, but certainly conscious of the fact that life isn't infinite. We will all meet our maker at some point, and we have to enjoy it while we're here.
Absolutely. Is that kind of how you keep going, you know,
yes,
through the struggles you faced in life?
I think so. I have a vision. So, yeah. And that vision's full of joy and experiences. And I'm on a bit of a journey.
Because it would be so easy for you to give up. You know, again, just talking about it with someone outside before we film this podcast, adversity either makes or breaks you.
Yeah.
And that, you know, it's valid for both, you know, both paths that you take, because no one knows how hard your life is. But how have you approached it in a positive way that it's making you?
I think because I've had to be independent from a really young age. Yes, I had some support around me, but no one's going to make it happen for you. You've got to take life by the reins and just make it happen. And when you've got no one to fall back onto, it just gives you laser focus. Right, okay, so I'm here. I need to be here. I need to work out a way of getting to where I want to be. However, whatever that is, whatever aspect of my life that is, and I've just got to make it happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when we say the word orphan, I've got quite an archaic image of an orphanage in my mind. How does being an orphan look? Was it the 90s when you're 15? How does that look?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So one thing that sticks in my mind, I've never liked to be pitied. And I really didn't like that. It was something that was very uncomfortable, and that's what comes with the word orphan, pity.
Yeah.
Oh, bless. But it's just another form of loss. Whether you've lost your husband, whether you've lost your sibling, being an orphan is just another form of loss that you didn't ask for. And I think layered with the fact that I was adopted as well, made it very kind of, I don't know whether it bolstered me. Yes, it made me very laser focused and resilient. Because this is an interesting point, because I was listening to a podcast with James, or what's his name? He's a gym guy, and he's got his own podcast.
Oh, you mean?
He's adopted, and he touches on one of his interviews. I think it was on Diary of a CEO.
Yes, I've listened to that one.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? And he's talking about they're talking about being adopted and whether or not that sets you up for a real bright future, because you're trying to prove something. And I think there's something in that. I definitely think there's something in that. It's hard to admit it to myself, but yeah, trying to prove something to be worthy. But you've got to get that worth from internally, or internal validation, which is what I've done over years.
Yeah.
Certainly, yeah.
And how have you gone about seeking that internal validation?
Oh, it's self-love. So it's all of the hippie stuff, you know. It's the meditation. It's it's really taking a true reflective look at yourself, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and saying that's okay. The way that I am, that's okay, for all the good, the bad, and anything else. And also sending that love out, even to those where it's very hard to do so.
Absolutely. Yeah, a colleague once said, "Oh, why are you being so nice to this person who's like causing lots of disruption and being quite unpleasant?" And I was just like, they're the people who need the love the most.
Yep.
Because as hard as it can be, and there's certain situations in life that make you want to close your heart.
Yes.
I really do believe in the power of the heart and keeping it open to people. I think it's something that's felt. If you walk in the room where you can tell someone has a closed heart, you feel it.
Yes,
Just like you feel the other way.
Oh, completely. Completely. And something I've always said to the girls as well when we've talked about difficult social situations or where they've been hurt, personally hurt. Hurt people hurt people. So we can't, the more you hurt them back, it just perpetuates the crazy cycle. So you've got to stop it with compassion and love, even when it's hard.
Oh, it's so hard. And at the same time as well, why lower your standards?
True. Yeah. But we all have a fall from grace at times. So
no, that is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
None of us are perfect.
Yeah.
But we can try anyway. But yeah, it just shocks me that there's not that much research done around the heart and its kind of electromagnetic power. Apparently, the electromagnetic power of the heart is so much stronger than the brain as well. But we all think, oh, it's the brain. Yeah, there's that kind of mind over, what is that, heart and the brain?
That's right, yeah. When you get the coherence between the two, that's when you work at the magic.
Absolutely. I mean, again, work in progress. But you have an idea for a podcast in your head. If so, we can record, produce, and promote that podcast to bring it to life. Contact us today to find out how. And going back to your Salvadorian roots, did you always have a yearning to meet your biological parents, even before your adopted parents died? As I can imagine, it was propelled by their death.
I was always inquisitive.
Right.
So that's why my dad would always talk about when he went over, and they would always talk about when I first came over, and that my mum and dad were part of something called the Salvadorian Association, where other families from the UK had adopted from El Salvador and other Latin American countries, but predominantly El Salvador. And we would meet normally down in the south, once a year. And during this meeting, they would share cultural insights, talk about music, play music, try to encourage the children within their white British family units to embrace the culture that they were born from and embrace their heritage, because just because you've been adopted doesn't mean that you have to remove and let go of what you were born with. And I think so I was always very aware and very comfortable with it, and very much like my dad really tried to encourage that aspect, probably even more so than my mum. But yes, of course, when I lost them both, definitely, of course, I was interested, and I had my adoption papers. It actually wasn't until 2011 that I decided, right, I'm going to look, I'm actually going to search for them, not knowing what was to come. Yeah.
And so how old were you in 2011, if you don't mind me asking?
Let's do the maths. Well, this is 13 years ago and I'm 41 now.
Okay.
Yeah, so in my late 20s.
Okay,
yeah.
Right. So still some time had passed from when you were unfortunately made an orphan to looking at, and how do you go about finding someone? I just find
it's wild, isn't it? So I basically just got all my adoption papers out and they're all in Spanish, and I was like, oh yay. But I managed to figure out kind of like, oh, that's my name, that's my mother's name, no father's name, okay, right. So I just started literally putting my mother's name into search engines. I actually did it with Google, no joy, and then my father, my children said, let's try a different search engine. I think it was it Bing or something? So we didn't find anything on Google, we found something on Bing.
That's crazy.
I know, right? It's really, I know, bizarre. So anybody found this, took us to a website where there was a message board, like an online message or chat board, all in Spanish. With my terrible knowledge of Spanish and the help of Google Translate, I was like, oh, I think this is a message from someone looking for someone who's got the same name as my mum. So I probably should message this person. So I did. I reached out and I said, I think we might be searching for the same person. I'm looking for Rosario Esperanza Silva. My birth name is Natalie Artiga Silva Montes. And then I got a reply back from a chap called Saul, or Saul, we would say Saul. And we exchanged messages, and I was like, to my ex, like, oh, I think this guy, he could be an absolute crank, but also like, what if it's what I've been looking for? Like, this is bizarre. few messages later, and then we exchanged phone numbers, and he called me, and then this guy with a really thick Salvadorian accent. So, one, he's definitely Salvadorian because I could just hear the accent. And he says, "Oh, hey, I think I'm your daddy." And I was like, "What? Okay, right." So that over the period of several days and probably rolled into weeks, we kind of exchanged messages, trying to piece everything together. And within a couple of weeks, a letter came through the post from someone who claimed to be the sister of the Saul I've been speaking with, who could be my father. And in the letter was a photo of me. Undeniably, it was me wearing the same little dress that I had up in the loft, next to another little girl that looked very similar to me, in a dress similar to one of the dresses I had up in the loft. So she had like a matching dress. And then this lady who looked like me and the little girl holding a baby, and it was my sister, my brother, and my birth mother in this photo. And that photo had been kept by my paternal grandmother, and it was my auntie that had sent it, Jenny. So shout out to Jenny, because she's gorgeous. Yeah, and they just couldn't believe that, all these years that Saul had been looking for us, that he found us.
How did you feel in that moment?
I was like, what's the validation I need to know that this was for real? This chap was who he said it was, even though I was fairly confident that, this would be some sort of sick, long drawn out game if it wasn't. But yeah, and from that point onwards, I basically discovered loads of my biological family all over the place.
Wow. And were you kind of flooded with love at just knowing that?
Yeah, it was lovely. It was, you could feel it. It's tangible. Especially when we connected in the summer. He was living in Sweden at the moment, at that time, sorry. And I flew out with my ex and the children to meet him. And it was surreal.
Yeah.
It was surreal.
Again, did you instantly feel that connection?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. There's this like magnetizing warmth that you can't explain. And then when I went on to meet other family, like you just, yeah.
Words don't do it justice.
No, I don't really know how you can explain it. And then you're like, oh my God, like and then people that you look like as well, like that's, and when I've met some of my cousins, it's like, whoa, that's scary.
I know.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what your father felt. Having searched for you all those years, did he tell you about the struggles?
Yeah, so he'd been from the point of us disappearing, he'd been searching for us, and he'd given up hope. He actually then relocated to North America, and he was living in the US, in LA for a long time. He dotted around different parts of America, and it had broken him and my mother, and yeah.
I mean, I'm welling up because you just think if your children go missing, you would never give up, would you? You would just keep searching.
That's why he was in Europe. That's how he ended up in Sweden. He was looking for me.
I suppose in terms of the world, he was quite close.
Yeah.
Oh, and where had he searched? Literally all around the globe.
Yeah, but he was doing it illegally. Flying the flag for Salvadorians. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but yeah, he was doing it illegally, and I don't think he'd been able to get into the UK. But he had a feeling like he'd always felt that I was probably in the UK.
Again, you do what you had to do. And
yeah,
a question I've been dreading. What about your mother?
So I discovered when I was reunited with Saul that she'd actually died in 1998, so I never got to meet her.
Just the pain that gives me in my heart, again, as a mother.
And I think the saddest bit of it was when I met her side of the family, the Silvas, in El Salvador in 2016. When I met them for the first time, they told me so much about her, and since I've visited since then as well, and they again told me about her life, and basically I think it just broke her. She was physically unwell for years and died at a very young age. She'd never got over the fact that we'd been taken. Yeah, it broke her.
I just wish she'd got to meet her. I wish she'd got to meet you. And I know you're spiritual. Have you kind of connected on a spiritual level?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Have you spoken to any mediums about her?
I've been to mediums, but I've never give them anything leading, and nothing has come up in terms of those routes. So, yeah. So I hold like I'm not skeptical, but I'm still to be convinced in some areas, because I feel like if she would come through.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean. But then I don't know how it works in the spiritual world. If you've lost someone in the, call it, real world, how easy it is to trace them in the spiritual world, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's intriguing. That's what I would want to know. And yeah, how do you manage to kind of have peace with that situation?
I think it took me quite a few years to make peace with that. To make peace with the fact that learning that she didn't willfully give us up for adoption was one difficult thing. Discovering that it was an illegal adoption because Saul basically looked at the papers and went, "That's not your mother's signature. That's not the right details. Oh, by the way, also, that's not your birthday. You were born in September." So I'm a Virgo, not a Scorpio.
Have you reverted back to your original birth date?
No, I've just left that. I've reverted back to my original name now.
Good. I love your surname. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think that was hard to process, the fact that, like, her pain as a mother, like you say, you feel that pain so raw. And because I'd lost my adoptive mum, it was just like, that's cruel, isn't it? That's so cruel for us all. Like, it's such a cruel situation that we didn't ask for.
So did you experience that grieving process in that moment again, for your biological mother?
Yeah, I think I had to process it over a period of time.
Have you had therapy to help with that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Bless you, you've had quite a lot to deal with. How do you stay so strong and focused? I know you said you've got your goals and you break down steps to work towards them, but some people can't even do that and they haven't experienced the trauma you've been through. How do you maintain that motivation?
I honestly don't know. Maybe it's just my girls. I'm very, very focused on my two girls and giving them a really, really bright future. And I actually want a bright future. Like I say, I want to travel more. I'm hopefully going to get back to El Salvador again this year.
Amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Life's for living, isn't it?
I suppose it's the only option, really.
Yeah.
When you look at it simply, there's that generational trauma. Is that the right word? There's talk of it in how we kind of hold on to the trauma, even in our DNA from past generations. Have you experienced that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a real thing. And it's interesting you say that, because when I went to go and visit some of my Salvadorian cousins in Canada, my cousin Sarah, she spoke about one reason why she didn't want to have children, and her sister too. They didn't want to continue the cycle of generational trauma in El Salvador, because there is a lot of generational trauma. You'll find that in any conflict place. You'll see it. You see it you can read articles on it in deprived areas of the USA, within Black communities, where it's been just passed on, not just through behaviours and thought processes and patterns, but like you say, some would say that actually it's encoded in your DNA and that you need to heal it.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate. It kind of goes back to that nature versus nurture.
Yes.
What's your take on that?
That's another really good question, because when we're talking about trauma and tenacity, the two T's, I liked what you were asking about in terms of like strength and focus, because I always have thought, is that nature nurture? Because my adopted mum was very strong woman, fierce. She fought cancer like an absolute pro, she right to the end. She, even when she was poorly, she would have this bright red lipstick and this like lovely wig on, so she always looked glamorous. So I was raised by strong people, raised by a strong mother, but Salvadorians are equally very, very tenacious, strong people.
Yes.
Oh, without a doubt. And it makes me so proud of it. I'm going to fill up.
I feel proud for you.
Honestly, they're like, and the people when you go there, they're just so full of love despite the pain, the adversity, and generations back, they're just lovely, loving people.
Mm-hmm.
They have the values right, have the heart in the right place. They'll give you everything they have when they have hardly anything. And it makes me like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, you often find that about the poorest people. They're often the kindest, and they'll give when they don't even have anything. And it's amazing. I can relate to what you're saying a little bit. Hopefully my sister-in-law won't mind me say, but she's half Spanish, half Mexican. And from meeting some of her family that are Mexican at her wedding, again, I felt that, very loving, very kind. They would do anything for you, even though they've just met you.
Yeah.
And it's, such a warmth.
A total warmth. Salvadorians are huggers too.
Oh, brilliant. I'm a
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so, what does the future hold for you?
It holds... I'm going through a challenging period at the moment, but I'm really excited about what the future holds once I'm through this little blip. Like I say, I want to travel. I want to spend more time in El Salvador as much as I can. Getting out. Originally, I wanted to get out for because I work in digital marketing and I have my own business. I can work remotely. So work 3 or 4 months with some careful planning, go and live out there, immerse myself in the culture, because the whole last, say, 14 years, it's been about reclaiming that identity and that culture. So that's what I want to do more of. I just want to travel the world as well as El Salvador, go to other areas as well. And
do you want to share that with your girls as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's all part of them.
It really is. It really, and that's a good point, because it is as much about filling in the blanks for them as it is myself. They're half Salvadorian. They've been to El Salvador, and it was planned for this year, but it's just on hold. But maybe when in a year we can all get out there together. But
and I know you have siblings that you haven't tracked down quite yet. That must be a firm goal for you.
Absolutely, that's a major part of what I'm trying to do as well. So for years I've been trying to find my sister Griselda and my baby brother Saul. Because we know they were adopted too, and I even had long lost family involved in the search, but nothing, unfortunately. So I continued to search for them because I promised Saul, the last phone call we had before he passed away, was I'll keep searching for them. But I did recently meet my half sister. So Saul went on to meet another woman and have a child, Elizabeth. My half-sister, I met her very recently when I was on a work trip to the US. I happened to be on the East Coast, so I was like, if I'm going to be there, this is crazy, I've got to go see her. So I caught another flight and went up and stayed with her in Washington. And she's beautiful. It was amazing. Her family are gorgeous.
I'm so glad you've managed to track some of your family down.
Yeah.
And such a heavy topic. My heart's hurting for you and things you've experienced in your life. And it feels kind of bad now to jump to our kind of fun feature at the end.
Sucker.
But we're going to go there and hopefully it'll lighten the mood a little bit. Thank you so much for sharing that traumatic experience that you've been through, Natalie. You are an inspiration. I've always looked up to you and admired you. That hearing your full story, just what an amazing, powerful woman you are. So, regular questions. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, how would you rate yourself at the following things? So how good looking would you say you are?
Put myself in about 6.5. Maybe it's a 7 on a good day. Yeah.
How funny are you?
Depends what mood you catch me in, what day of the week. Maybe put myself at about a 7 there as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you a good cook?
I have, oh God. I'm okay at what I do, so I'm going to put myself down as about a 6 for that.
Okay.
Play it safe.
Right.
Yeah.
No worries. Are you a good singer?
I wish I was, but sadly no. Even though I'm quite musical and I learned the violin when I was younger, the voice box doesn't do it what my brain wants it to do. So yeah, I'd say about 5.
Okay. Do you drink alcohol? And if you do, are you good at it?
Oh, no. So I've actually drink less and less as years have gone on, and I drink CBD drinks and things like that. So yeah. So I'm a terrible drinker. So I'm a cheap date. Like literally one drink and it'll give me a hangover the next day. So sad, isn't it?
Yes. How good at parenting are you?
Oh, you'd have to ask my kids that. No parent is perfect, but in terms of like giving them what they need and listening and giving them, holding space for them, and I like to think that I'm good emotionally and practically. So I'm going to put myself at 8 there. Always room for improvement.
Oh yeah, in any set of life. Are you a good friend?
Oh, definitely. I like to think so. They're listening to this, they can comment.
Yeah. Comment on the box below. Intelligence levels.
It depends what you consider intelligent, because I think when it comes to emotional intelligence, yeah, I'm probably very, very high. But ask me to do algebra, horrendous.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that. How kind are you?
I think I'm a very kind person. Probably one of my qualities that I'm proud of, so I'm going to give myself an 8 for that.
Excellent. And how good at sex are you?
Ooh, crikey, that's personal.
Yeah.
You'd have to ask my partner.
Well, I'm not going to, but yeah, I don't know him. That would be maybe too.
If he's listening, Alex, don't comment.
Yeah, actually, comment in the box below, Alex. We'll use that theme. Yeah. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Thank you. Thanks very much.